Welcome back to Our Africa. Now, Breaking Borders is an initiative that encourages the youth to participate on issues to do with leadership, issues to do with entrepreneurship. It also looks at promoting tourism between African countries. With many of our youth realizing the value of exploring Africa and seeing the various monuments and discovering our rich history, Breaking Borders was born through Paul Modjadji, an award-winning dancer who's traveled extensively across the globe and in Africa.
My name is Paul Modjadji. I'm a dancer, choreographer, philanthropist, young entrepreneur, and I'm passionate about Africa.
Paul with his team have ventured to 10 African countries, exploring different cultures, sharing experiences, and making new friends on the continent.
Breaking Down Borders is a youth platform, basically. It seeks to unite and bring together some of Africa's brightest young minds in Africa for the betterment of Africa. So in short, it's basically a youth platform. Well, as one of the founders of the initiative, my role is to basically instigate the collaborations that are possible for young people within the continent. So the project actually was inspired by my travels as part of the Young African Leaders Initiative, which saw about 500 of us young people converge in the USA in 2015. And one of the things that was really quite iconic for me from that whole experience was that a lot of young Africans have so many amazing technologies and so many amazing achievements, and yet hardly ever get the opportunity to have platforms within the African continent to get together, to interchange, to trade across borders. So as a young person, my role is to basically, drive the movement from the front.
A documentary journaling their journey is also on the cards, just to help us and the rest of the world to know more about the motherland.
It has been an absolutely incredible journey to date. We've traveled across 10 African countries in the past year, just basically looking to collaborate with young people and looking to create networks. And the highlight of the initiative in this 1 year was a summit in Africa Youth Month, Africa Month rather. A summit that saw about 60 young people from 15 African countries converge in South Africa to network, to basically discuss issues of socio-economic development, and to talk about how young people can really begin to take ownership of the African economy. So as you can imagine, traveling across 10 African countries in a year is quite a mammoth experience. And one of the things that we're passionate about is to promote Africa to young Africans. A lot of the times young people in Africa know so much about the West and about Europe than they actually know about their very own continent. And when we look at the over 1 billion population that resides in Africa, we see a potential for a market that in more ways than one is not explored by Africans. So we hope that this documentary will expose our audience to the wealth of opportunities and places and spaces and people that make part of our beautiful continent. So in one, we hope to promote tourism, but also to, in some way, inspire young entrepreneurs to think beyond our borders.
As South Africans, however, we tend to have a misconception about traveling the continent.
I suppose one of the biggest misconceptions South Africans have about Africa is that it's a dark continent, so to speak. People don't think of Africa as the next frontier in as far as exploring markets. So we always think of trading with other sort of outside of the continent countries more than we actually think of economic opportunities that might be available within the continent. And having explored the continent, one is able to realize that there's a lot more development in the continent from an infrastructural point of view, to education, to just manufacturing. There's so many countries that we could really be taking advantage of and trading with, and even potentially creating ties with, economic ties with, that we potentially don't. I think there's a strength to Africa that a lot of South Africans haven't yet tapped into, and that in more ways than one ill-informed about. You know, the most interesting thing about the experience we've had is that, like South Africa, all the countries we've been to have different demographics and have different rural and urban spaces. So I don't think there's one single country that we've been to where we were disappointed with the level of infrastructure within that country. I mean, Tanzania is definitely one that I think tops our minds, because how often do you go to a coastal city, with Dar es Salaam being an example here, where you have an urban dwelling, you know, you have an economic hub of a country right in a coastal area, you know. So from an infrastructural point of view, to just the economic activity of the city was really one that was really dynamic. It felt like we were really in New York, right here in Africa.
Breaking Borders aims to bring unity, more especially on the youth, with more trips lined up and another youth summit on the cards.
You know, there's a lot of amazing developments that have come from this initiative. First of all, when we started to go on the tour, we had not anticipated that it could lead to a summit being a platform that would, you know, derive from the tour. And we're excited that, you know, the summit itself was an evolution or development of young people themselves that requested that, you know what, as much as we appreciate these like country-to-country sort of bilateral type of connections, we believe that the only way to move Africa forward is to really expand the conversation and to expand the network to the whole of Africa. So what we see moving forward, coming from this initiative, is more of touring opportunities where young people across countries are visiting each other. We are seeing a platform of, we are seeing the Breaking Down Borders Africa Youth Summit becoming an annual program that will allow young people to come together and not only conversate but also trade. Because in the future we see an Africa Youth exhibition that will see young people bring some of their best creations and innovations under one hub to market to one another, so we can really begin to trade.
As Africans, we need to understand that unity is strength and that division brings weakness.